argument is it anyways? And tonight we're going to go a little bit outside the norm of the network, and we're going to break one of our rules. And Jeff and I are going to sit here and talk politics. This is a pre-recording, so this was a Tuesday night's debate amongst the two presidential candidates, and we sit there and give a little commentary. It wasn't too brutal. It was actually a really good conversation.
Yeah, something I noticed, and it's something we need to acknowledge. We are not experts.
Oh no, absolutely.
And there's spots throughout the whole thing that we're both wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the caveat of this is our opinions.
Yes, this is the opinions of me and Jeff, and not
our prospective parties.
Or the whole network,
or the network for that matter,
or the networks, yeah. But we thought it would be fun to do because this is sort of like a debate, conversation, whatever kind of show, and this is some interesting political times. There's some history here, so I thought it would be fun, and it was. So yeah. So I had fun too. So on that note, guys, let's get into it.
Here we go.
Here we go. All right. What the heck?
Okay, so we need to switch sides. Oh, wait, hold on. Harris. Oh, they're going to shake hands.
What's up? Good debate. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Welcome to you
Switch
both.
sides
it's
here.
wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here.
There we go.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started.
Serious.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
Economy's better.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations.
Why isn't she doing it now?
People. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call
infrastructure,
an opportunity economy. Because here's
cap
the thing.
on insulin,
we know that we have
just to name a couple.
The cap on insulin was done under Trump.
And the cost of housing is
it was made permanent under Biden. Trump didn't take it.
We know that young families
also
to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the
I think tariffs are a
will
good
be
idea.
Substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China.
The steel
in fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. we were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago.
As we go.
This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're
1919
taking
and 1920 was the worst
jobs that are
inflation in
occupied
America.
right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon.
And
you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States.
Now,
you look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate.
Yeah, I was right. 2.9 is
Vice
current
President Harris
inflation.
respond on the economy here.
Right, but
I would love to.
0.3 under
Let's talk
Trump.
about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Yeah,
Donald
you can't say that. It was
the
a
worst
fucking pandemic.
public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
It was his inability
and what we
to
have
handle,
done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
I don't believe that either.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't
except
read
a couple of your aides
purposely.
are part of it and advocates for it. Your vice president wrote the preface for the guy who wrote some bad for it.
But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic.
The guy who wrote Project 2025
not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world.
Trump says he has nothing to do with it.
We got masks. We did things that nobody thought possible.
I think they both have something to do with it.
And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit.
Yes.
But I was the one that
the jobs bounced back, and then under the Biden administration, millions more were added.
Donald Trump has no.
I don't believe so because
it is.
When you look at his unemployment right now, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite they give her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4
God, I want
sentences
to
that
pause
just,
right now and
we'll try
address.
and lower taxes.
I know.
She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Her plan is the freaking DNC platform that they release every 4 years during the Democratic convention. That's her plan. That's what they adopt.
Your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax.
Your
proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here,
lowest unemployment is 3.6.
You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20%
right now. It's at
coming into this country. As you know, many economists say
Trump,
that tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer.
So
Vice President Harris has
higher.
argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll.
Under
the
Trump,
polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump,
which is something you guys kept saying.
They bought the chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat.
She's
going to my philosophy. But
if
she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be
the end
of our country.
National Convention.
She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job. But the governor before,
it wasn't West Virginia that's misquoted. It was the state of Virginia,
and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby, and that's why I did that, because that predominates. Because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Not true. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion.
It's not true at all.
Is born is okay.
That is,
and that's not
there's
okay
no
with
truth
me,
to that.
Hence the vote. But what
and
I
is there medical issue
for 52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states, and through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote.
That isn't true either.
That's what happened. There
wasn't. There was a 60. There's a 67, 66% approval rate.
Was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought.
He's lying.
But each individual state
now,
is voting.
By removing Roe v. Wade,
people now,
it goes
it's not
to the
tied up
state
in the federal government.
Yeah.
The federal government now has no say.
The Supreme Court had great courage in doing it.
Mortality rates have gone up for
credit to those 6
mothers.
justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to it.
Thank you. I'm glad she.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies.
That's not
fact check. Yeah, it is. It's her. It is the moderator's place to fact check. Yes.
Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around 100%. Our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes
I
again.
agree. I don't think he personally will. But I mean, I think he lost.
Because
I think he definitely lost this, but he's lost on this abortion thing.
Republicans, and
it's the abortion topic.
And every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may
not
take
every legal scholar said that. That is ridiculous to say that.
Has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now
sitting there saying that 100% people wanted what 67% did.
No, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to
Answer
Congress.
the question, Trump. Will you veto
it?
Yes or no?
Especially now with the 50-50,
Yeah.
essentially
Deflecting,
50-50 vote.
will you
Senate
veto?
and the
Yes
House.
or no?
She's not
Yes
gonna
or
get the
no?
vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come
It has
close
nothing to
it.
do
So
with the
it's just
question.
soft. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student
Actually,
loans,
some
and
did
then
get. Some of them did.
I think probably
Only
her
reason why it
boss,
became a
if you
catastrophe.
call
is
him a
they
boss, he
bought
spends
it.
all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out
illegal.
and said, we'll do it again. We'll
Yeah,
do it a
it's
different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans.
But how does that answer the question? Would you veto a bill if it came to your desk?
They talked about that.
Exactly.
That they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, JD Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with JD. In all fairness, JD,
and
I don't mind if he has a certain view, but
just
I think
say
he's speaking for me.
Or
But
no,
I really didn't.
You're making this
Look,
worse on yourself.
we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close
The
to
point of
getting student
discussing
loans.
is because you're on a debate
young
stage with
people and a lot of other people
That's the
that
whole
had loans.
point.
They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government.
The question
and we did
was,
something that
what if it
everybody
came to
said
your
couldn't be done.
desk?
And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned,
See, now she
nowhere
just
in
sidestepped
America
the question too.
is a woman carrying a pregnancy to
Not as
term
bad as he did.
and asking for an abortion.
I don't
That
think
is
either
not
one of them
happening. It's
will say
insulting
yes or
to
no.
the women of America.
Well,
and understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray.
I don't like when Democrats. Well, let's just go back to Roe versus Wade. If Roe versus Wade was so good, it wouldn't have been overturned.
What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it. And what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans.
How's it feel, Trump, to turn people into freaking travel terrorists?
And that is why.
Yeah, but at the end of the day,
state where this issue has
no,
been
there
on
are
the ballot,
Republican states introducing legislation to arrest women going across state border.
It's another lie.
I
have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
So I don't remember him ever coming out against IVF.
Why don't you ask
why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
see now he's going back.
Abortions in the 7th
but
month,
will
the
she
8th month, the 9th
accept
month, and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
That's not what he said.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to
Republicans, bringing up that misinformed
across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And
so
let me
talk about that. He was talking about immigration in general,
including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump
said, fuck it.
Called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Yep. Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
That's pretty effed up.
And
he did do that.
Once again,
it comes at a time.
That's pretty
where
fucked.
the people of our country actually need a leader.
She's never
who engages in solutions.
I don't know what that has no relevance.
Actually addresses the problems.
They had a bill that was led by a Republican leadership in the Senate.
Who would prefer to run on a problem.
That the Democrats said they would go with and sign.
And I'll tell you something.
And
He's
Trump made the
talk
call.
about
Don't do it.
I want to run. Subject that is being
no, he did. He even admitted to it.
Something really
he admitted to it.
Invite you.
I haven't seen that.
Mitchell and Lindsey Graham is also
because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about
his rallies
is
are 10 times the size.
You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
But she also
people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us
I heard about
there have been no
this.
credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or
Yes.
abused by individuals.
Even the cop,
community.
even the cop station, even the police station
people on television say my dog was taken and
that
used
wasn't
for food.
true.
So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not
So
taking
he's
this
up here
from
on
television.
national
People
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by
propagating of
the people that went there.
information.
Again, Springfield
That's what
City
he's
manager
doing.
says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what
There
you've heard.
is no evidence of
You
that.
talk about
It
extreme.
was a made-up story.
You
Why
know,
is she cackling?
this is, I think, one of
Because
the
she
reasons
was
why
laughing at
in
him for
this
looking like a
election,
dumbass.
I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with
I say
President
laugh
Bush,
at him
Mitt
more.
Romney, and John
He's
McCain,
hating life.
including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And
Yeah, but
if
Dick
you
Cheney
want to
was
really
kind of a-
know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former
I agree,
national
especially when
security
he
advisor
came out and
has
said
said he
he
is
wanted to
dangerous and
suspend it.
unfit. His former secretary of defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so
Agreed.
graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan
Including
and the Taliban and the 13 people who's
got left
were just
behind.
killed, viciously and violently
But
killed.
Trump,
and I got
you
to know
negotiated
the
the
parents and
release
family.
of 5,000
They didn't fire. They should have
Taliban.
fired all those
One of which
generals, all
became
those top
the new leader
people,
that
because that was one of the
helped
most
kill those 13
incompetently
troops.
handled
You
situations
released them.
anybody has ever
He
seen.
released
So
5,000
when somebody
Taliban.
does a bad job, I fire him.
And he
you
not
take
only
a
did
guy
he
like
release
Esper,
5,000
he was no good. I
Taliban,
fired him. So he
when he
writes a
did
book.
that
Another one writes a
negotiation, he
book.
didn't
Because
even
with me,
leave,
they can write books. With
let in
nobody
the
else can
Afghan
they?
government on
But
that.
they
on
have
that
done
deal.
such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you.
Just
But
fire
just to
everybody. That
finish,
fixes the
I got
problem.
more
Why do
votes
you argue?
than any
well, what he's
Republican
saying
in
is,
history.
if you get rid
by
of somebody
far.
who's doing a shit job, you bring
In
somebody
fact,
who can do a
I
better
got more
job.
votes than any president, sitting
He
president.
is the one
in
saying they're
history
doing a
by
shit job.
far.
By his standard.
Let me continue on immigration.
Like,
It's what you
he's
wanted to
just
talk
saying
about
they're doing
earlier.
a
So let's
shit
get
job.
back to your deportation proposal that the vice
When he's
president
the one
has
doing the
reacted
shit
to
job.
as well.
Releasing
President Trump,
5,000 Taliban.
You call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is
Show
much
me your
higher
papers.
because of them. They
I was
allowed
gonna say,
criminals, many millions of criminals.
Show me
They
your
allowed
papers.
terrorists.
Prove
They
you
allowed
belong
common
here.
street criminals. They allowed people to
Oh,
come
no
in,
ID,
drug
we
dealers, to
arrest
come
you.
into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into
Crime
our
rate's
country.
lower under
And
Biden than it was
this will
Trump.
be one of the
so, okay.
greatest mistakes in history for them to allow.
That's
and I
because if
think
you
they
steal less
probably
than
did it because they think they're
$2,000,
going
you
to
don't
get
get
votes,
busted.
but it's not worth it because
And,
they're,
you
they're
know,
destroying
Texas
the
has
fabric
a
of
different
our country
standard on
by
that
what
that
they've
allows
done.
them to steal
There's
even more.
never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the
That's how
fabric
crime
of our
goes
country.
down when you don't
Millions of
prosecute.
people let in, and all over the
Crime
world,
goes down when poverty
crime is
goes down.
all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a
No,
new
it's
form
not.
of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President
Dude,
Trump, as you know, the FBI is
quote unquote migrant crime. National born citizens
Excuse me,
commit
the FBI
crime at much higher rates.
They didn't include the worst cities,
both legal and illegal.
They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was
for him to sit there and say there's a migrant
number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond.
Well, except for the fact
Well,
that
I think this is so rich
are being killed
coming from someone who has been
I'm not saying crimes aren't being committed by
security
immigrants.
crimes.
I'm saying national-born crime rates are much higher than immigrant crime rates. Much higher.
Sexual assault
through the roof for migrant crime is bullshit line.
Remember at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents.
You called for defunding the entire police force
on 34 felony counts.
So she never called for defunding. She called for restructuring.
That we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses.
She's going to give money to new home buyers like Obama did.
But frankly, the American people are exhausted.
That creates more debt.
And
same old tired
you know what? It didn't.
Excuse me. Every
one of more national debt
was started by them against their political opponent.
And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest of the
And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them.
It worked under Obama. It was popular, and nobody ever said it was bad.
Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found
nobody made anybody go
on the
after
documents
you.
Case. And what happened in my documents case?
No, they didn't. Nobody made anybody.
Biden supporter.
A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out.
The judge didn't make the judgment. The jury
used
did.
it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you.
No, they weren't fake cases. Prosecution brought the evidence to a grand jury, and the grand jury indicted him.
And understand the context in which this
citizens, a jury of his own peers indicted him, and a jury of his own peers found him guilty.
It turned into the 34.
Recently,
no, it wasn't just one crime. It was 34 different counts.
Any misconduct,
yeah, it's still crime.
The White House again.
Yeah,
it's
but
still
it's
crime.
This is someone who openly said
it comes
he would
down
terminate,
to the way you word
terminate the Constitution of the United States.
And they basically said Biden did the same thing. They basically said Biden did the same thing, but he's so fragile to
express disdain.
I don't remember anybody saying Biden paid anybody hush money.
What it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the
keep stuff out of the press.
Fucking Bill Clinton did.
Certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
It's not relevant anymore.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
But
Clinton was a pig anyway.
Crime was a crime. Why is it Bill Clinton?
I probably took a bullet to
for
the
what
head
crime? What crime did Clinton?
The things that they say about me. They talk about democracy.
Adultery isn't a crime. Adultery isn't a crime.
To democracy with a fake Russia investigation.
We do have a lot to get
to.
We have a lot to get to, Lindsay.
If he did it, you should be prosecuted for it.
You said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You want
but
mandatory.
Did he pay him? Was the hush money payment made for campaign purposes? Because I know that happened after he was already in the office. Trump's was, yeah. Trump's was.
No, they were paying his own money.
Your policy position changed.
So
it was money. It was money paid from Trump to Stormy Daniels through shady money LLCs and all that shit, using his fixer Michael Cohen.
I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to.
He shakes his head no, but she's right. She did.
Energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign
There's
oil.
more. There's more oil production under Biden's administration than there was Trump's.
Because of an approach that recognizes that we
and drilling more too.
Foreign oil. As it relates to my
He
values,
did release a bunch of reserves in order to curve the prices because of OPEC. But no, there's more drilling under Biden than Trump.
I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got
that was one pipeline out of Project 4 from oil going from Canada to the Gulf.
6 times is a value that I bring to my work.
That's fine.
But it was the bigger one of the 4.
Work with the private sector.
It was 3 times size bigger than the other.
But it was Canada's oil. I don't give a shit about Canada's oil. We're talking about the oil produced in America is more under Biden than Trump, regardless if they cut off one pipeline back in 2020.
Protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values.
Like 4 years ago, she was saying she wanted to ban fracking. Now she says she's for it.
I know. She did flip flop. She did flip flop.
She's saying she did.
I disagree with her. I think fracking should be banned. I don't like it. But I think we should curve.
100% about it. That's the problem. I don't understand.
Well, first of all, I wasn't given $400 million.
You should look it up. It's interesting.
My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised.
It's huge.
So we don't have to talk about that.
It's huge.
She's been against it for 12 years. Fund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it. Okay,
I don't see how she's being anti-police when she's
12 and probably 14
former prosecutor that usually takes the cops' story over the citizens.
She kept people in jail.
Wait a minute, I'm talking now.
Hold on, she kept. Okay, I'm sorry.
Does that sound familiar?
Sorry.
Trump just told you to shut the fuck up.
Damn.
In Minnesota, and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail.
Get them out.
She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do.
Hold on, she helped people raise bail.
That are in prison.
Yeah.
This is
no, is that wrong? Is that illegal?
No, but
she wants to confiscate you, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election,
raised money for bail,
Pennsylvania
people who are allowed to make bail. I don't see what she did wrong.
So important, in my opinion.
So
I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
She was getting out on bail. They still had to go back to court.
They got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up.
Just because you're bailed out doesn't mean you're
immediately
free.
let these guys go
free
to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not
issues
things for the environment.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol.
Can we stop litigating this?
Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. peacefully and patriotically. I said during my speech.
3 hours after the fact. Shut up.
No, he said that
3 hours after
the
fact.
event.
3 hours after. 3 hours
He didn't
after
tell
that.
anybody go in the building.
Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer.
When you get a chance, you should look up
ever shot her.
The concept of
disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I asked, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning,
she wasn't in charge of the border.
You're not talking about the border yet. That's because
she
knows what a bad job they've done.
No, she wasn't.
What about those people?
Her job was just to go.
They're going to be prosecuted.
Her job was a fact-finding mission.
Countries all over the world, not just
not
South
a policy
America.
change.
They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just ask you.
David, one of those people are going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted.
They keep putting this allegation on her as she was in charge of the border, like she was a border czar or something.
One of those people are going to be prosecuted.
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
She on a diplomatic assignment was to find out ways to help fix the border issues by talking to other representatives from other countries.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened.
Listen to the whole tape.
The mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible for she didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
He takes no responsibility for anything at all.
An acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on both sides. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election, there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up.
She does make a good point.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave.
I see a headline
right now.
I'd
like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time.
I don't get my information from a headline.
It's been so bad. It's so ridiculous.
No, but if
go
you
down
read the
to
article,
Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you. Because
but at least he admitted that people in J6 killed now.
In these times that we're living in. Mr. President,
he did just admit that.
After you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide.
Yeah, I'm reading the article. I'm right. Yeah, she wasn't a border czar.
You have said, quote, you lost by a whisker.
The headline is misleading.
Didn't quite make it.
Yeah.
You came up a little bit.
That's Trump.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for
and it was looked at by over 64
votes. The most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told that I got 63, which was what I got in 2016. You can't be beaten. The election, people should not be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things.
There was no criminality found on the Democrat side when it comes to these
illegal immigrants coming in. They're trying
individuals. Yes, there were individuals,
English. They don't
but
even
that's
know
not the widespread fraud that he's alluding
to. Trying to get them to vote, and that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
It's 2024. He's running for president. He can't sit there and say, "Yeah, I lost 2020."
Lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
Republican,
judge
looked at it
and said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing. A technical.
That means he looked at it.
In the system where a person.
Yes.
It's like reading a headline.
The president of the United States.
No. If there's no standing, that means the judge looked at the evidence that was presented. Like, yeah, you got nothing here.
On it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you.
I mean, we can call bad evidence evidence, but it's bad evidence.
But you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a
it's old news. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about
now. They have put it into decline.
I think we have a nation. It's important to know how we got it.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President
Harris.
No,
I get that.
Heard
but
the president
at the
there
end of the
tonight. He said he didn't.
It's old news. Why are we talking about that?
He still believes.
Because it shows his deficiencies as a president.
By President Biden.
And that's what they're on stage debating is who would be the better president. So it's relevant.
President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And that's
another thing.
Very difficult time processing.
Joe Biden got 81 million votes. That sounds like
have a president of the United States.
Yeah.
That's higher than Obama,
as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free.
If anything, if Trump's first presidency did anything, it was invigorate the left or the liberals.
World leaders are laughing.
And when Biden dropped,
military leaders, some of whom worked with you,
it made it even more.
You're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way.
This country's tired of old white men in office.
What over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
He's confused about a lot of things.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the
He's
most
confused on the fact that
they call him a strong man.
He won or didn't lose the 2020 election.
Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look,
maybe because they're sovereign countries and we don't control them.
He said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak
citation needed, please.
You saw at a debate just a few months ago that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes.
And when how was he thrown out?
She was the first one to leave because she failed.
Biden decided to drop out.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, but you tell me somebody didn't whisper in his ear.
Very well.
We've got a lot more to go.
Oh God, I'm sure lots of people did. I'm sure lots of people did.
I'm not dropping out no matter what.
Yeah. And I agreed with them, and I was wrong. But yeah, you're right. People probably were whispering in his ear, and I'm glad they did. He made the decision. Okay, I'll step down.
Respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent
He wasn't
civilians.
kicked out.
You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. Man. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true. Far too many.
I haven't been following the Israel Hamas thing. I don't know who to go with on that. I think they're both wrong.
What we know is that this
the whole
must win end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal, and we need to
contextualize the Israeli-Palestine issue as a Biden problem. That's ignoring the decades-long history of that whole area.
Agreed. It's not the U.S.'s problem, period.
And in that solution, there must be security.
I mean, yeah, the problem is
it kind of is because
the Palestinians.
Yeah, and in that facet.
I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also
I'll go in the first day and have him removed
and prevent the killing
day one in 2 weeks?
Do what he did with the Taliban.
Never started.
Show him a picture of your house.
Russia
would release 5,000 of them.
I know Putin very well. He would have never. There was no threat of it either. By the way, for 4 years.
By the way, this is your house. I know where you live.
Killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with
She didn't say anything of that story.
To make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. if she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way,
how's Truth Social doing there, buddy?
Because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people.
We got that red wave coming in 2022.
It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get
that. He says keep looking. Look at this. Look at that.
With Ukraine and Russia ended, if I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one.
I'm getting a lot of lag on my side, just to give you a heads up.
It is well known that he said of Putin,
make sure you don't have too many things open.
He can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you.
Yeah, I think that's a good eyeball. I'm going to drop out. I'll be right back.
Yeah. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective.
How does he approve
because Biden's not the president of those countries.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back.
And that was the first part of the debate. So they're at a commercial break. So Jeff and I thought we would pop in right quick in between the scenes, so to say, and go ahead and remind you guys about the whole network itself. Monday nights, we got Men Caring for Men. Tuesday, there is the Licks House of Music. Wednesday is What the Fuck News, and I heard last night was pretty fun. Thursdays is every other Thursdays. Last night was Cash's Corner, where they go over wrestling highlights and etc. And then Fridays is you guys are here with me and sometimes Jeff. For Whose Argument Is It Anyways? And just a quick heads up, next Friday, we're doing a little something different. It's not going to be Whose Argument It Anyways. It's a little treat Jeff and I are kind of working on. And then Saturdays, we have the flagship show on the network, Nonsensical Nonsense Open Door Challenge, where you and the audience can pop up after they drop the links, shoot the shit, hang out. If you have something you disagree with, you have something you agree with, and just pal around and have fun on Saturday night shenanigans for 6 whole hours. Last Saturday was fun. There was some hiccups with some old Taco Bell, but that shit happens. Sunday we have Jeff's Garage. Hey Jeff, you want to give us the rundown since I got
yeah, actually we're getting ready to do I think this Sunday we should be coming back. We're gonna be Jeff's Garage, we talk about if it fits in your garage or if it's a hobby you have, we're gonna talk about it. We should be getting back on schedule. I gotta get with Benji and figure out a time. And I think Glick is also on Sundays at around noonish Eastern time.
That's right. It is football season. So he's doing football recap and shit like that. Yeah, that's right. So everybody, if you are a football fan or you just like the sports, check him out. Glick is a huge football fan. Yeah. And
then of course, the last thing we can't forget is we do have merch now. nonsensical-nonsense.myspreadshop.com. You can go and we got I guess we got hats coming soon.
Yes. So last Saturday I heard that hats weren't a thing, and I complained to the boss.
Yeah,
I complained very scathing.
Your complaints have been heard. Apparently, we're going to be doing the Flex Fit. We're going to be doing hats, kind of like what you're wearing, and then we're doing trucker hats as well. So, yeah, those are coming. Of course, we already have mugs and tumblers and sweatshirts and all that fun stuff.
So go get you something. Spread us on you.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Jeff, you got anything else to add?
No, that's about it.
All right. I think we're gonna get back to the rest of the debate.
Like we're coming back just right in time
here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict, Mr. President.
We came back just in time.
Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy. That it's in America's best interest to do so. Arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons
none of that's true.
Like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship.
I agree.
Like, who cares on?
Okay,
like,
they respect me.
If all the countries are giving what they can, does it matter if it's all equal or not?
He hasn't even
but everything shouldn't be put on the U.S. to do it.
And not everything.
The
fact that he's admitting other people are contributing
settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other.
Problems in our own country.
That war would have never happened. And in fact,
some of those problems in our own country
after I left.
Our problems in our country doesn't happen in a vacuum. Nor do the problems in our country can only be solved by ignoring other problems. And we can work at them all.
It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president?
Trump sat there and said he was able to get
and just to clarify,
Americans back from Russia
like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify,
he's not running against Biden.
You
Trump.
believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives.
Yes or no?
From being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as commander.
I think Trump's okay with Russia winning and taking.
And would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Did you watch the Putin interview?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind
with Tucker Carlson
running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
I caught highlights of it.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours.
Well, yeah,
just give it up.
So,
and that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened.
Texas used to be part of Mexico. Do you want Mexico to invade us and take it back?
A few days
technically,
before Russia invaded,
so I can go get fucking Wendy's and in and out.
Boundaries to defy one of
no. That's if Mexico takes Texas back,
which is the importance of.
Just think about that. That's
it.
And
unless it shuts down, you better hurry up.
Him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda.
And Trump says we gave them money. We didn't give them money. We gave them munitions.
Why the European allies,
which is kind of our thing. We do. We give munitions and we build more because money goes to
president. And that we
understand
the importance of the great military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour.
He hasn't looked at her once.
I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And
yeah, we do. What are you talking about?
Use them, and maybe
nobody talks about it.
But he does.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure our fucking generals in joint our joint chiefs of staff have meetings on
this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was.
Well, no, because dude, that's a good point. We don't talk about that shit anymore. We don't do the whole nuclear Cold War boogeyman shit no more. He's used that. He's that old. He thinks that's the way it should be.
And the war started 3 days later.
Why isn't the news running shit about nuclear scare tactics?
She's worse than Biden, in my opinion. I think he's the worst president in the history of our country.
Because that right there shows how much fear he wants us to live
in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President
1991 is when Ukraine declared its independence.
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fella. Yeah. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strong men instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The president of the United
She's got
States
a good
is
point.
commander in chief.
Yeah, but
and the American
Trump
have a right to rely
Trump puts Putin on a podium.
Who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility.
He gives him accolades when he should.
That there is
no, but at the end of the day, it comes down
we
to
stand
knowing
up
thy
for
enemy.
our principles and not sell them for the benefit
know thy enemy.
personal flattery.
Don't freaking fraternize with him.
And Vladimir Putin, I do want to talk about Afghanistan.
Keep your enemy close.
In the first hour of
Friends
this
close,
debate.
but your enemy's closer.
I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time.
Maybe he's just working on a return
policy. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility?
More people died in Afghanistan, citizen-wide, or
well, I will tell you,
more U.S. troops died in Afghanistan under Trump than Biden.
Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David
on 9/11.
Of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the president of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers.
So we gave him 5,000 more.
With the Taliban, because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with.
But it's within Afghanistan's country.
And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had no.
What did that do? It didn't do anything.
Negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement
majority of that equipment was owned by Afghan government.
Terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
and
on.
These
because you released 5,000 Taliban and they killed Americans.
In my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country
is releasing 5,000 Taliban
attacked terrorists. Ukraine because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
But it was your bad deal. They got those 16 Americans killed.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't
by
know
the
she was
time they
black
got him
until
out,
a
it was
number
under
of years
Biden,
ago
which
when
means
she
Biden
happened to
could have
turn
changed
black,
it.
and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe
He was
it's
the boss?
to weigh in on
As
the
the
racial
boss, you can change the plan.
I don't.
He
and
changed.
I don't care what she
Not
is.
the time
I don't
limit. The
care.
time limit was already set under the
You make a big deal
negotiation
out of
with Trump.
something. I couldn't care less.
So when the new
Whatever she
president
wants to
comes
be is
in,
okay with
it was a
But
deal
those are
made
your
by a
words, so
president,
I don't know. I mean, all I can say
by
is
the
I
office
read
of the
where she
president.
was
So Biden still
not
has
black
to
that
uphold
she
the
put
same
out.
deal.
And
Unlike Trump
I'll
when he
say
comes
that.
in and
And
reneges
then
on the
I
treaty
read that she was
with
black.
Iran, though.
And that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Missed the question.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly.
Oh, I think they brought up
him
using identity politics.
And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to Black families.
Yes.
Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that.
Trump uses race as a campaign.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like
it was more divisive under Trump's administration.
Years, when a lot of
so much more divisive.
Agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately.
They were coerced.
We're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back.
He doesn't care about facts.
50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden.
He can't do it. He can't sit there and stop running against Biden.
Because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
It's the same party, and it's the same politics.
It's the same administration. It's the same. It's the same administration. But he can't resist bringing up Biden in the context in which he does.
Leadership for our country.
It's
one
funny.
Who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare
Trump made
the plans.
it easier for people.
I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas,
there was some small
business. I have a plan, $6,000.
No, I agree. There was definitely small business incentive
to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment.
The internet's so much better in Newark, Ohio.
Assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling.
This is a debate,
name calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President Harris, forward. Thank you. Let's turn to policy. Let's turn back to policy.
You know what? He's actually been really good about not name calling tonight.
To defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she has a plan to not allow fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay,
that's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to respond because the former president has said something twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry. We're gonna move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan? And can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it?
So we got to take that pop shot, but she does too.
And I saved it. I did the right thing, but it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it.
Health care is one of those things.
As good as it can be.
Health care is one of those things that shouldn't be incentivized by profit motive. It shouldn't be. It should be
like Canada.
We come up with something. I would only change it.
I agree.
One thing about I'm envious about Canada.
And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point. The former president. I made very clear my position on fracking. And then
I don't think the affordable health care is enough.
Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's
I'm getting tired of people saying, "Oh, the affordable health care is the best thing." Like it's better than what we had, but it could be much better.
People stand.
I agree.
When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote.
Hi guys, I don't want to interrupt. I was just like, what in the world are they doing?
Who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't
John
get
McCain
rid
was
of
a
the
joke.
Affordable Care Act. You have no plan.
John McCain
And
was
what
a
the Affordable
respectable
Care Act has
person,
done is
at least.
eliminate the
I didn't
ability
agree with
of
some of his
insurance companies to
policies, but
deny people with
he was a
pre-existing conditions.
respectable person.
I don't have to
at
tell the
least.
people watching tonight. You remember what that was like?
It's the same guy that say
Remember when
claims
an
he invented
insurance
the
company
internet?
could deny
John
if
McCain. I
a
don't know.
child
That
had
was
asthma, if someone was a
that was
breast cancer
Bob Dole or
survivor,
some shit
if
like
a
that.
grandparent had diabetes.
Not
And
McCain.
thankfully, as
That
I've
was
been vice president, and
I
we
don't know.
over
I
the last
remember hearing
4 years
something
have
about that.
strengthened the Affordable Care Act. We have
DARPA came
allowed
up
for the
with
first
the
time
internet.
Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people.
Oh, that was Al
Donald Trump
Gore.
said he was going to allow
Was it Al
Medicare to
Gore?
negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did.
That
And
was
now we
Al
have
Gore that
capital
said that he
insulin
invented
at
the internet.
$35 a month. Since I've been vice president,
McCain's a
we have
Republican. Al Gore was a
prescription
Democrat.
medication
When
for seniors
talk about
at
being
$2,000 a
bold.
year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is
He played a
that
key role in
access
it.
to health care should be a right
DARPA.
and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen
And you
the
have to
Affordable
get rid
Care
of
Act,
insurance
not get rid
companies
of
and
it.
bring
Fastest
full
roll up
free
in
health
terms of where
care.
Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
she
lot
made
of
a mistake.
Forget that because doctors
Number
unions
one,
won't let it
John
happen.
McCain fought Obamacare.
No, it's
for
insurance
10 years.
companies that won't let it
And it
happen.
wasn't only
Exactly.
him.
You'd be
It was
surprised. There's
all
probably
of the
more doctors
Democrats
that want it.
that kept it going. And you know what?
Probably.
We could do much better than Obamacare.
I'm
Much
just
less
guessing.
money.
I don't know that,
she
but I do know
brought
it's
in
insurance companies that
private
lobby.
I
insurance
deal
for
with
people,
insurance
private
companies. There's a
medical
lot of
insurance.
money there.
That's another thing she
Yep.
doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump.
are paying
Insurance
privately for
companies and
insurance.
advertisement
They worked
companies
hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants
take all the
everybody
money.
to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need
You
immediately.
wait
Trump,
6
thank
months
you.
for an
We have another
operation
issue that-
No,
sometimes
no.
now.
No,
important for a number
immediate
of
stuff.
Americans, in
But,
particular younger
I have
voters, and
a
that's
little
climate
bit of
change.
insight on this
President
because that's
Trump,
how
with
It
Mexico
depends
regards to
on
the
what
environment, you say
it
that
depends
how
on
Mexico
what
does
it
clean air
is.
and clean
And
water.
It depends on
Vice
what it
President
is.
Harris,
No,
you call
because there's
climate
like
change an
you go
existential
to a
threat.
hospital, there's
The
40
question to you
fucking people
both
ahead of
tonight
you,
is, what would
no
you
matter
do
what.
to fight climate
Yeah.
change? And Vice President Harris, to
Gunshot
start with
wound.
you,
Well, this
1
guy
minute
got
for
a
you
boo
each.
boo. He's
Well, the
he's ahead of
former
you.
president had said the climate
Yeah.
change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone
believe
who
in
lives in a
climate
state
change.
who has
It is
experienced
true.
extreme weather occurrences, who
Climate
now is either being denied home
change
insurance or
is a
being
thing.
jacked
It
up.
is going
You
on,
ask anybody who
and
has
humans have
a victim of what
exacerbated it.
that means in terms of losing
Exacerbated
their
it.
home, having nowhere to go. We
There
know
is
that
data
we
on
can
it.
actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last
Yes, but
4
you call the
years,
young
we
people
have
of
invested
America stupid.
$1 trillion in a clean energy economy.
When did she do that?
So
She said
increase
people that are
domestic
18 to
gas
20,
production to
was
historic
18 to
levels.
30 are
We
stupid.
have created over
She said
800,000
that?
new manufacturing jobs while I have been
Live.
vice president. We have invested in clean
send you a clip.
energy.
You know,
to the point that
I'm
we
looking
are
it up.
opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of
18 to 24-year-olds.
What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries.
She did say that, though, but it was out of context. It was a self-deprecating comment about herself, too, when she was in college between 18 and 24.
Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
We've reached that point
We'll
where
be right
he's
back.
just going to
Closing
sit
statements
there
from
and just
both of our
make shit up.
candidates.
Oh, wait, no, we've been here the entire time doing that.
Presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right. Well, that was the second half of the first debate between Trump and Harris. Before we get into closing statements, and while ABC is on a break, and by the way, I do want to mention that we are utilizing PBS, so thank you, Public Broadcasting System, for streaming this event live so we can tap into it, and hopefully we don't get in trouble, Jeff. But so before we get into statements, Jeff, do you have any like little quick caps on the debate you want to throw in there?
I think both candidates are making good points. Whether some of them are wrong or right, or depending on who said it or what was said, that will be determined in the days to come, or it has been determined in days to come. We just, once again, we're not experts. So, and I know we've made some opinions up until this point, and there's a chance that both of us are wrong.
Yeah, true. Well, we will see. I honestly, personally think that Harris did a pretty damn good job. There was some hyperbolic statements she made, or she got some numbers messed up. Rhetorically, though, I thought she was pretty good. I thought honestly Trump was kind of like cowardice toward her, the way he wouldn't look at her. He would always look down and look the opposite direction. I thought that was, I'm not saying that's what he was doing, but body language wise, that was my opinion.
It's almost like a fuck you.
I thought, no, I honestly thought that like when it comes, I thought when it come to the power on that stage, she held the majority.
There was parts where you could kind of tell this, you know, obviously we're recording this later. There's parts that if you rewatch, she's kind of chuckling where she's almost getting nervous. I don't know.
Yes, there was some times where she had to pick her back.
So the body language on both sides is interesting. I'd love to hear from a body language expert on both of them, because there's times where she's, you know, but Trump is all stoic, and you know, he, as you said, he does refuse to look at her almost the entire time. However, my favorite part is
he was stoic up until the point that he was stoic up until the point where until he fed into her trap. But go ahead.
Well, however, the ultimate trap that he set and pulled off.
She said, "Go ahead."
No, because and you'll agree with me when you hear it. Is him saying, "I'm speaking now." Does that sound familiar? That he did to Pence, or she did to Pence back in the day. So
with that's right. I honestly forgot all about that. Yeah.
And it like you and I, when he did it, we both laughed because I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. I forgot that does harken back to the whole Pence and her.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Pence. So that was Karenisms, but yeah. So anybody still watching, please go ahead and give us a follow on bio.link/nonsensical network. You can find all our shows, everything we do. And so we get back to the closing statements, sir.
Let's get back to the closing statements. All right. And let's go. Yes.
Welcome back tonight. The time is
perfect time.
Just in time.
President Harris, we begin with you.
Here we go.
So I think you've heard tonight
that was the last break,
two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future,
editing this shit,
and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA. I was an attorney general, United States Senator.
The government's not telling women what to do.
I've only had one client.
Yeah, they are. They're telling her that she can't do something. That's the same as telling her what to do.
A victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
It's in the state's hand now.
The only thing I
well,
ever
that's
asked
the state government. It's still a government.
Yeah, but
and that's the kind of president.
That's not the whole government. That's the state.
Someone who cares about you.
There is that difference.
It's still a government. I mean, she's not wrong what she said.
Americans.
She didn't specifically state
on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So
I think these are their closing statements.
She's going to do this. She's going to do that. She's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to.
Didn't he have 4 years to fix a bunch of shit that didn't get fixed?
And it was fixed.
Hasn't she
like
done
what?
It? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do.
The inflation rate was lower, but inflation was still there.
Because you believe in things that the American
the inflation was the inflation rate was due to just poor handling of COVID. That's
things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation.
Do what?
We're a nation that's in serious decline.
Everything
we're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on.
We're leading the world in the best economy right now.
And Ukraine,
comparatively to all the other freaking
Third World War.
But once again, everybody uses the U.S. dollar as a standard.
The power of weaponry.
Yeah, that's why we're doing that.
If prices are up here, they're up there.
She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban.
Our economy is better than China.
What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
He brought up Ronald Reagan earlier for something. I just want to say this real quick on immigration. Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 3 million
in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
That was a good thing. And that was a good thing for joining Jeff and I on this debate commentary kind of discussion back and forth. I think this is a pretty important moment in our political landscape when it comes to the country. And again, I thought it would have been a fun little discussion with Jeff. And you know what? It was. I had a blast tonight. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And if you do like what you saw, please hit that like, that subscribe. And if you want me to annoy you even more, hit that notification bell. Jeff, is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I agree. I think as we do stuff like this more often, I think we're going to get better at it. This is our first one, so bear with us, everybody. But
it was so much fun.
It was so much fun, and due to the wardrobe change that you can see, we're editing and putting it all together. And I think if you like and subscribe, and We'll show you more, not just political stuff, but other things too.
Ooh, even more wardrobe changes.
Maybe even some nudity. Not from us. Not from us.
Not from us. Again, thanks everybody, and good night.